Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Podcast. You probably know someone who might need to lose some weight. You might need to lose some weight yourself. So, today we're going to talk about obesity and we're going to talk about why obesity happens, what it might be, how you might be able to change that situation yourself without any semi-glutides like Ozempic or Mounjaro or all those guys. So we're going to explore this in depth and we're going to talk about what obesity is and, kind of how, let's say, what happens to people who are obese. Now, I have some personal experience with this. So when I was young, when I was, let's say, between the ages of 10 and 14, I was overweight. Not morbidly overweight, but I would have definitely been categorized as obese when I was a child. And, like all kids, I got made fun of and called names and all that. But my personal experience with it was I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to, look like other kids. I wanted to be thin and, attractive and all that stuff. I couldn't. And what happened to me was I started using marijuana when I was 15, 16 years old. And guess what happened? All that weight went away. I also started smoking cigarettes, which I wouldn't recommend. And again, I'm old, so this was back in, let's say the 1970s. So, but I know what that feels like. And I know what it feels like to be judged for your weight. And I know what it feels like to be, to work with everything in you, let's say, to try to lose that weight and not be able to. Okay. So I understand the frustration that a lot of people have who are overweight and understand a lot of the things that you go through, let's just say. So I have empathy for people who are overweight. Now, weight loss right now is we're running at well over 50% of our adult population would be classified as overweight or obese. And there's a new word for this. It's called metabolic syndrome. And that would also include your propensity to be diabetic and heart stuff, right? And so we'll talk about each of these things individually. We're not going to lump them all together into one big thing, but we're going to talk about them individually. But today we're going to talk about weight loss. So let's first of all talk a little bit about how your body understands whether you're full or whether you need nutrients, okay? And that happens through something called the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is our master regulatory system. This has nothing to do with marijuana, by the way, what I'm going to talk to you about. So don't get wrapped around the axle that Chip said endocannabinoid, so we must be talking about marijuana. No, we're not talking about marijuana at all. We're talking about an internal system inside of you and inside of your dog and your cat and your fish and your bird called the endocannabinoid system. This system is naturally fed and driven by dietary fats, not marijuana. Your dog doesn't smoke marijuana and he has a master regulatory system called the endocannabinoid system. So he has to drive this with fats, and that's the way you drive it. But the endocannabinoid system it's our master regulatory system. So as such, it's responsible for, gee, I feel full right now, or gee, I feel hungry right now. So it is the control on those, let's say, situations. Okay. And really, because of our addiction to food, and again, I do a lot of podcasts about food and talk a lot about this, we kind of lost this feedback mechanism a little bit. But we certainly should be able to tell when we're full, and we shouldn't be like a horse. I remember when I was growing up, they said, yeah, a horse doesn't have any mechanism to let it know when it's full. So you have to really control a horse's food. If you just, put a giant truck full of oats in front of a horse, it would eat itself to death. It's like, wow. Well, it turns out we're kind of the same way. And a lot of us are literally eating ourselves to death. But we'll talk about how that works in a second. Okay. But the endocannabinoid system is the master regulator of the mammalian body. And so, as such, it's absolutely involved with how you feel full and how you feel hungry. But let's talk about how you feel full real quick, because there's a lot of this in the news right now. So we've all heard of these semi-glutides, right? Ozempic and Mounjaro and all this stuff supposed to be the greatest thing in the world to help you lose weight. Well, what do these drugs do? Well, all they're doing is stimulating your satiety. Or satiety means full, fullness. I'm full, I'm satisfied, I'm sated. So all they're doing is stimulating your satiety molecules, which are GLP-1, GIP, peptide YY. There's a bunch of them that come out of a cell to, let's say, signal that, hey, I've got enough nutrients. I'm good. Don't have to eat anymore. Don't have to do anything else. I'm good. Well, the semi-glutides do that directly at the cellular level. So they are in the middle of a bunch of systems, let's say, that are trying to communicate with cells and get feedback from cells. And, cells sing songs to each other. All right. So now you've got a big brass drum beating in the middle of all of that cellular signaling that says, shut off your satiety molecules. Now, will that cause you to lose weight? Yeah, but there's going to be some unintended consequences. Okay. So if you understand how the endocannabinoid system works, though, you can understand that all of those cells and all of those satiety molecules, those I'm full molecules, are controlled at a higher level through the endocannabinoid system. And they would have to be, because the endocannabinoid system is our master regulatory system. So instead of trying to flip 6 switches in every cell, you can flip one switch, which flips all those switches in many cells. And so that's what we think is best to do. That's how your body works. And so your body basically has a big master switch, GPR 120, that can be pushed. And again, it's pushed with an endocannabinoid that's built from oleic acid. So it's built from olive oil or, an avocado or nuts, but it's built from oleic acid called ethanol oleomide, or OEA. OEA impacts the GRP120 neuroreceptor and causes you to feel full by releasing GLP-1s, GIPs, and peptide YYs. So you don't need to get a shot in the arm in order to release all these guys. All you need to do is eat oleic acid. Kinda. Okay? Kinda. So, technically, if let's say you weigh too much and you're super hungry and it's not time for you to eat, I should be able to give you a tablespoon of olive oil and you should feel full. That should satisfy any, let's say, nutritional cravings or things like that, right? Stomach rumbling is a different deal. And maybe we'll talk about that in a second. Maybe we won't. I won't dive down that rabbit hole right now, but well, I'll go ahead and dive down that rabbit hole because we all think this is full. We all think this is what it means to be full. So a couple of facts, all right? You can go 40 days without eating. Most of us can, let's say. And certainly if you're overweight, you likely can go longer than that because you have lots of nutrients stored. They may not be good nutrients, but you have nutrients stored. But anyway, we can go 40 days without eating. So why do I feel hungry, or what I think of as hungry, every day at about 10 o'clock and every day at about 3 o'clock? What's going on there? Do I need to eat at those times? No. It turns out that our body's a machine, and our body really works in relation to the sun. Okay. And during certain times of the day, it's time to do work in certain parts of the body. The Chinese body clock, if you want reference to this. And so if you go look at the Chinese body clock, it's going to tell you that, let's say, between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., we're working on our heart. All right. If you eat lunch between 11 and 1 p.m., you are not working on your heart anymore. You are working on your food. Okay. But it also turns out that between about 10 o'clock, between 9 and 11, let's say, and somewhere around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we begin to express CB1 neuroreceptors in our gut. And this is what we feel as the tummy rumbling. And this is what we mistake of as I'm hungry. Well, that's not what the signal is. The signal just means now would be a good time to eat. because of the Chinese body clock. So I'm not doing anything else right now, Chip. I'm not working on your heart. I'm not working on anything. Now would be a good time to eat. And so I can work on your food while I'm not working on anything else. Okay. So, and we'll get more over the next 5 years. You're going to get so much of this stuff. You won't even, it'll just glaze your eyes. Right. But for right now, again, around 10 a.m. And again, don't eat in the morning. In a perfect world, intermittent fast and kind of take the afternoon window of 3 to 4 o'clock. But that appears to be good times to eat. And it's when your body is not working on other stuff. So we all get tummy rumbling about 10 a.m., let's say, and about 3 p.m. Why? Because it's just good times to eat. But it doesn't mean we have to eat at those times. And again, what will satisfy that tummy rumbling? A tablespoon of olive oil will satisfy that tummy rumbling, unless you've got extenuating circumstances. Okay. So, what would those extenuating circumstances be? Well, something that we never really consider in medical science just yet. That's the existence of a critter, a bug, a third party. And it turns out that there are bacteria, some of these we think of as super helpful bacteria in our that might not be, but there are bacteria in our gut biome that will convert our bile. So the way you feel full has to do with bile, okay? And it has to do with how bile attaches to a certain enzyme structure, and then how that enzyme structure is used to build satiety molecules. And if your bile is being impacted in certain ways, let's say, then you can't do it. You can't make the satiety molecule. You will never feel full. You'll be like that horse that we learned about when we were kids, that just pull him up to a truck full of oats and he can eat and eat and eat and eat, and he will never feel full. And that's what happens in obesity. No feedback at all. No feedback. And here's the other thing that happens in obesity. So you have two major types of bacteria in your gut biome: bacteroides and firmicutes. And bacteroides, for the most part, are kind of the good guys, although you need kind of both sides of these. But bacteroides, for the most part, are the good guys. So they'll produce short chain fatty acids that help offset, let's say, nutritional deficiencies that help build our immune system. They produce short chain fatty acids that tighten up our gut junctions, that help with things like IBS and Crohn's and all that. So you don't want too many of them. You don't want them overgrown. But at the same time, they're kind of the good guys. All right. The bad guys, and again, they do good stuff too, but they're kind of thought of as the bad guys, are firmicutes. All right. And if these guys overgrow, what happens is they begin to have more of a caloric demand than your tissues. So your basically signaling gets messed up between what your tissues and organs and you need versus what these third parties need. And these third parties can definitely affect, your signaling, let's say, like I'm hungry, I need to eat. And they need to eat more than you do. So they're going to signal you to eat more than we normally would. And they signal hard. They signal with dopamine and serotonin. They signal like in a reward way, like eat this cookie and I'm going to make you feel so good about eating the cookie. And they can do that because they have control somewhat over dopamine and serotonin. Now, anyone can override, let's say, those impulses with force of will. I mean, we're strong, let's say souls riding in this body, and we can override those impulses with force of will. But at the same time, if we don't know that they're there, we can't. So imagine this: if people who, let's say, have trouble with losing weight, are overgrown with a certain type of bacteria. So it's kind of, is that beyond their control? Well, no, they can change diet and, change that, but we haven't known that in the past, right? So we haven't really known how configurable we are around diet in the past. So we've just all accepted that, I am what I am. I can't really, change my form and function. But it turns out we're darn configurable around what we eat. But let's say you've kind of been eating the same thing, and you might have tried to diet, you might have tried to cut back on calories. None of that matters, because what you've been eating, let's say for the past 2 or 3 years, has established a pattern. You become overgrown in a certain type of bacteria, and those bacteria will demand calories, will demand more calories than the rest of your tissue systems, which will cause you to overeat. And this is the loop that most obese people are in. Okay. And can you change this loop? Yeah, I'm going to tell you how to change it in just a second. But how do we try to change this loop now? Well, we try to change it by restricting food. Well, that's just like, literally, this is like trying to take heroin away from a heroin addict. It's not going to work. The signals are so powerful. I mean, and there are certainly some people who carry too much weight who can override those signals, but most people can't. And again, that signaling is going to signal for things like gluten, sugar, really, really high calorie, things, right? That aren't really good for us, but are really good for the bacteria. The bacteria really like them. These overgrown bacteria really want you to eat a lot of sugar and gluten and some amino acids. They'll chow down on amino acids. So they will basically, again, they have controlled dopamine and serotonin. So if you're not paying attention, you'll be standing in the cookie aisle eating cookies and wonder, what the heck just happened? Why am I in the cookie aisle eating cookies? So what can we do? So are there things that we can do? Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of ways that we can get in the middle of all this. So at True Medics, we have built a product called Fast. And this product takes all of these things into consideration. Okay. So this product will basically give you the satiety molecule. So it's giving you the molecule that creates OEA, which produces satiety. It's also knocking back a lot of this noise that happens in the gut biome and a lot of these bacteria that want to alter bile. And so we're changing that situation at the same time that we're providing this satiety molecule. And this appears to work very, very well. And it's super safe, right? So we're just using food. I'm just using food to do all of this, basically. And so super safe. And results are, along the lines, let's say, of what pharma is getting, which is super interesting, right? So we're just using super safe, natural products. But we're doing this in a way that we're understanding how those natural products work and how kind of they block and tackle in your system. And then we're also understanding the problem at a deeper level. So that's why, we can, let's say, perform this voodoo magic, where other companies and people can't, is it's just because we have a deeper understanding of the endocannabinoid system, a deeper understanding of how you work, and a deeper understanding of how natural processes affect that. Okay. All right. So if you want to do it by product, we've got a product, and please don't go inject the semaglutides. Again, it's not safe. And you can read on every package of any semaglutide why it's not safe and what it will do to you and what the adverse reactions are. You can also get online and look at those. So, you don't want to go down that path. And as long as you're not allergic to anything that's in our products are all designed to be super safe. Kids can take our products. So they're really, really, really safe. So if you have a kiddo who's struggling with weight, then check out the True Medics Fast product. But what can you do on your own? And again, God gives me knowledge, I feel like, and whether you believe that or not, that's up to you. But I know that to be true. So God gives me knowledge. But part of my deal with God is that I have to pass on that knowledge to you. So I need to tell you how to do this on your own, and that's part of my deal. So here you go. Here's how you can do it on your own. Firmicutes overgrowth is always associated with, let's say, not enough fermented food. So fermented food will more control the bacterioid side of things. And that's what we want to do, is we want to promote the bacterioids. bacteroides over the firmicutes. And so we can do that with fermented food. So apple cider vinegar, sauerkraut, pickles, but watch the dye in pickles. They put a lot of horrible dye in pickles. Things like that. Kimchi, those little pickled onions, little purple pickled onions, anything like that. So try to add those into your diet, and this will help reestablish a more normal gut biome and help cut down the cravings and really the whole obesity profile. So, what else do we want to say about obesity? Let's throw in this last little bit because this is super important. And you will hear me talk about this on almost every single podcast because it's so important and it's such a hole in our understanding of how we work. Okay. So the most important foods that you eat every day are omega-3 and omega-6 fats. Why are these important? They just for 100,000 reasons, but they build your endocannabinoid system. So again, omega-3, omega-6 fats build our master regulatory system called the endocannabinoid system. They also help conform a biome. So if a biome is omega-6 heavy, you're going to have a lot more leaky gut, a lot more propensity to gain weight. You're going to be just a lot more dysregulated than a gut biome that has equal parts of omega-3 and omega-6 fats. So the last piece of this is really up the omega-3s and make sure that you're balancing your omega-3 and omega-6 fat. It would be almost impossible to lose weight, let's say, under our current average consumption of omega-6 fats versus omega-3 fats. It's just not going to happen. And the other thing that you're doing is you're configuring your immune system in a very inflammatory and reactionary way that also doesn't help with obesity. In fact, in obesity, obese people lose their endocannabinoid tone. So in the endocannabinoid system, it's really important. Let's say it's like an engineering surface. And so if I have more touch points on an engineering surface, then I've got more control over that engineering surface. And omega-3s promote or help promote more engineering surface. Omega-6s help kind of deny engineering surface. And so the more engineering surface that I can have, again, the more control I'll have over things. It's really interesting because people who are obese have way higher circulating endocannabinoids, and they seem to have less control over their body. So isn't that interesting, though, that the body, let's say, appears to be working really, really hard to control itself, to control that obesity, but at the same time, the signals aren't being received. And why? It's because of all the noise happening in the gut biome and also an overconsumption of omega-6. Okay. So hopefully that gives you all some more information about obesity. If you are overweight, hopefully you've learned something from this, and hopefully you've got some new tips and techniques to try. I'll give you one more. Intermittent fasting is the biggest tool that I think that I could ever teach anybody. And intermittent fasting will absolutely help right this situation. If you're overgrown in firmicutes, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to eat more fermented food, or you're going to have to take like a Trumetics product or something. But ideally, again, we want to balance that endocannabinoid system. All right. Well, let's leave it here for now. So we'll be back next Friday with another exciting episode of Chip Talks Podcast, where we will dissect another human problem down to the very nip and nub, and we'll tell you guys how to fix yourselves. And we also likely will have a product that will help you at Trumetics. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week for another exciting version of Chip Talks Podcast.